Hey, I'm golf broadcaster Matt Adams. The updated and expanded second edition of my book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments, is now available. Readers can expect to march with Arnie's Army at the 1960 U.S. Open, relive Jack Nicklaus's remarkable 1986 Masters win, and be amazed by the Tiger Slam. The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments. Pick it up where fine books are sold, including BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, weightlifting fans and sports fans. Welcome to another edition of no-nonsense, old-school weightlifting history. You can also find my articles and podcasts on Yesterday Sports on the Sports History Network. My name is Mark Morthier, and I'm joined once again by our weightlifting historian, Dr. Conor Heffernan. Conor is a lecturer in the sociology of sport at Ulster University in Ireland. He runs the History of Fitness website, Physical Culture Study. So we'll get into the 1972 Olympics. Last week, we did the 1968 Olympics. And the weightlifting at the 1972 Olympics occurred in Munich, Germany from August 27th to September 6th. And in 1969, only shortly after the 1968 Olympics, the International Weightlifting Federation added 2 new weight classes. So one of those new weight classes is the 52 kilo class, which for our American listeners is about 114 and a half pounds. So those are some of your really small guys. Most of these guys probably not even 5 feet tall. And then we go to the 56 kilo, then 60 kilo, 67 and a half kilo. We go to middleweight, 75 kilo, light heavyweight, 82 and a half kilo. Middle heavyweight is 90 kilos. And now here's where we have a change. Before, anyone over 90 kilos was a heavyweight. Now they have added a new weight class, 110 kilos. That's roughly 242 pounds. And then anyone over 242 pounds is a super heavyweight. So we have, and once again, I apologize if I cannot pronounce these names. We have Zygmunt Schmausers of Poland, won the gold medal in the 52 kilo class, with a total of 337 and a half kilos. I really can't pronounce that name. Smolchers also won gold at the 1971 Worlds. He won a bronze at the 1973 Worlds, and he won gold again at the 1975 Worlds. Then we have Hungarian Lahos. Have no idea how to pronounce this last name. Szucs. Do you know how to pronounce that, Connor?
I don't, so I think you've done a very good job of it. So congratulations to you.
Anyway, this Hungarian lifter won the silver medal. He repeated as the silver medalist 1 year later at the World Championships. In 1975, he won a bronze at the Worlds. Third place went to Sandor Hulkritzer of Hungary. He also won a silver medal at the 1971 Worlds. And we have a fifth place finisher, Ong Gyai of Burma. Although he finished in fifth place, he broke a world record in the snatch with a 105 kilo lift. That's 231 pounds. Okay, Conor, what did you want to add to that weight class?
Well, I think really the interesting thing is obviously, the creation of the new weight class itself. Like a lot of these athletes would have been formerly or at least dabbled in sort of bantamweight divisions before the flyweight division came out. And I think actually the third place winner, Sandor, had broken a world record in the bantamweight in 71. So it's just more the creation of this, because there's a lot of interesting narratives around the 72 Olympics. Obviously, this is the last time that we're going to have the clean and press as an Olympic lift. We also have the new creation of two new divisions. So there's a lot sort of shifting in weightlifting that might seem somewhat small, but actually has big ramifications for the sport in general. And, the people that you're talking about, especially, say, first place winner, they were around weightlifting, previously in, say, bantamweight. But this really gave them a new opportunity to medal. And this will be important when you start to look going forward, I suppose, at who these nations are who are competing in these. Like, you'll see a lot of Eastern Bloc nations, a lot of Asian nations in these lighter weight divisions. So it sort of makes the medal table itself more competitive, where you can have lifters from different nationalities who are maybe being phased out in the heavier weight classes being given a chance to shine. Outside of that, Zygmunt, obviously, who medals, he goes on to be quite important in Polish weightlifting. He was a coach. He led the Polish team to the Beijing Olympics in 2008. He's in the IWF Hall of Fame. Just something, I suppose, to show that, for someone like Zygmunt, this helped to solidify his importance and his expertise within the sport.
Absolutely. Yeah, I do think it was a good decision to add that weight class. Okay, we move on to the 56 kilo class. That's 123 and a half pounds. We have Imre Foldi. I believe we spoke about him in the last podcast. Another Hungarian lifter who placed second in the last two Olympics. This time he took the gold with a world record total of 377 and a half kilos. Foldi had an impressive career in weightlifting. He medaled 3 times in the Olympics, 6 times at the World Championships, winning the gold medal in 1965. We have the Iranian Mohammad Nasiri. He won a bronze medal at the 66 Worlds. He won the gold medal at the 68 Olympics, gold at the 69 and 1970 World Championships. He won a bronze at the 1971 World Championships. This time he had to settle for the silver medal. Again, we have lifters here that have had a very storied career, very impressive careers. We have in third place, we have a Soviet lifter, Gennady Chetin, who placed first at the 1971 World Championships. He wasn't able to repeat that. This time he won the bronze medal. Okay, Conor, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about Foldi and Nasiri in the previous episode. I suppose one thing to mention on Foldi, and it's pointed out to me by a Hungarian friend, is that he was eventually elected Sportsman of the Nation in Hungary, which is an honour only 12 people can hold at any one time. And it's specifically for people over the age of 60 who've had these sort of incredible sporting achievements. So it's maybe something to really reiterate how important these medals were for him. You've talked about the switching between Foldi and Nasiri, which I think is interesting. The only other thing to mention, I suppose, is probably our third place winner, Chetin, who is a great Russian flyweight and bantamweight lifter. I think his career best is probably 375 kilos across all 3 lifts, then those being the clean, the jerk, and then the snatch and then the press. The previous year, you're right to say, he had actually won a gold medal at bantamweight with a total of 375. His performances in the Olympics themselves fell much lower than that. So, if he had been able to replicate his best, he would have finished in second place, pushing Foldy very close. Foldy wins with a total of 377.5 kilos. So, there was an opportunity for him to maybe have scored even higher. There's also a very hard fought victory for that third place finish. The Polish weightlifter Henryk Trubicki finishes 2.5 kilos below Chetin in fourth place. So there's a lot of battles going on within this table. Obviously, Foldy and Asari is the big one. And both of those men do set Olympic records in that weight class in the military press. So it is a hard fought, arguably more competitive, division than the previously new created flyweight division. So there's stuff going on. I think 2 Olympic records, and Foldy does set a new world record for that 3 total across the jerk, the snatch, and the military press. So it's a dominant victory, but if Chetin had performed at his best, Foldy would have been run much closer, I think.
Right. And what's really amazing is the consistency of these lifters, just year after year after year, being in the top 3.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we move on to the 60 kilo weight class. That's 132.3 pounds. We have a Bulgarian lifter, Norer Nerekian. He won a bronze medal at the 1971 World Championships. This time he took the gold medal with a world record total of 402.5 kilos. In second place, we have Dito Sandiz of the Soviet Union. He won the silver medal. Dito had also won a silver medal at the 1968 Olympics and a gold medal at the 1969 World Championships. Then we have Janos Benedek of Hungary, was a gold medalist at the 1971 World Championships, and he took the bronze medal this time. Okay, Conor, you're up.
So, thank you very much. The first thing is obviously we see some Olympic records being broken again in the military press, and how legitimate those records are. I would encourage everyone to read John Farr's article on the removal of the military press in the Olympics, because there was excessive back-leaning in a lot of these lifts. So it's an important thing, I think, to note. But we have 3 people setting an Olympic record in the military press. Obviously, top 2 competitors, but then the 9th place lifter, Yamir Papuri from Albania, sets an Olympic record in the press of 127.5 kilos. We also have the eventual winner, Nurer, setting a world record across the 3 lifts with a 402.5 total. But Nurer is an interesting one. This is being the Bulgarian weightlifter who finishes first. He'll medal twice at the Olympics. He'll win a gold medal in Munich in 72 and then again in Montreal in 76. Comes with a host of gold medals in World Championships and European Championships. But he's trained by sort of the great, guru of Bulgarian weightlifting, that being, Ivan Abadijev, who's known for popularizing the Bulgarian method. Now, he had actually won Bulgaria's first weightlifting medal in 57, and then he began to start coaching people at a local level, from the late 1960s onwards. And Nurer is one of his pupils, that comes under his training methods, which I think is a really interesting, tie into the later history. Obviously, Abadijev's ideas come more so in the 1980s, but it's still, the seeds are there for that eventual transformation in Olympic weightlifting. The only other thing which I found just fascinating about researching this, Nurkin was told that he should try boxing, and then he was told that he should try basketball, but he was too short to succeed in either of those things. Then he eventually comes to weightlifting after that. So, sort of what if and sliding doors moments abound in all of these things. The only other, I suppose, tidbit, for this particular weight class is that sort of disappearance, I think, from some of the second place winners. We talked about this in the previous episode in 68 Olympics, the strength of the Soviet system. Dito Sanidis, who's the silver medalist, he had won silver in 68, silver in 72. he'll drop away now. He'll become a European champion in 73, but he'll drop away and be replaced then by a new generation of Soviet weightlifters. So just again, really reiterating that strength and depth component that we've talked about in the last episode.
Yes, and you mentioned the legendary coach for Bulgaria, Ivan Abajev, and he took over as the Bulgarian coach. I'm not exactly sure what year. Do you know what year he started coaching the Bulgarian team internationally?
Oh, that was a good question. Let me check my notes. Because he's known in Bulgaria from the mid 1960s. Let's have a look at my notes. When does he start? No, I'll keep digging and I'll come back to that in a second.
Abajev, for those who don't know, he pretty much brought in a system of training that was really unheard of at that time, training his lifters up to 6 times a day, 6 training sessions a day. And so those who were not naturally gifted or who were perhaps injury prone really those who did not survive the training system just kind of fell by the wayside. But those who could handle that training system, they all became world record holders and Olympic champions. The success of the Bulgarian team after Abajev took over is just legendary. So, and we're moving on to the. I lost my place. We have 67 and a half.
No, you're fine. So we're right. 67 and a half. And just before we go into that, it's 68 to 89 is when he's head coach. And then obviously he comes back again from 97 to 2000. And again, for people who don't know, 12 Olympic champions, 57 world champions, 64 European champions, and as you rightly say, Mark, one of the most brutal periodization programs I think the sport has ever seen, which one could only survive if you're blessed with the genetics, the bone structure, the recovery, and potentially, well, in theory, literally performance-enhancing drugs. So an incredibly successful, if not controversial, figure within the sport.
Absolutely. Okay, 67.5 kilo weight class. That's 148.8 pounds. We have Makarby Kirchanov of the Soviet Union won the gold medal with a world record total of 460 kilos. He also broke the world record in the clean and jerk with a lift of 177.5 kilos. That's 391.3 pounds. That's some incredible amount of weight for a man of that size. Kirchanov repeated his gold medal performance at the Worlds the following year. Then in second place, we have Maldin Kirchov of Bulgaria. He took the silver medal and broke the world record in the press with a lift of 157.5 kilos. That's 347.2 pounds. The gold medal always seemed just out of reach for Kirchev. He won the silver at the 1969, 1970, and 1973 World Championships. And 1975, he won the bronze medal. In third place, we have Poland's Zbigniew Kaczmarek. He won a bronze. That was a bit of a disappointment for him after winning the gold medal at the 1970 and 1971 World Championships. Okay, you want to add to that, Connor?
Yeah, like there's some interesting intrigue. You know, the first place winner, Mokarby, and like you, Mark, I am going to butcher some of these names, and I do apologize. He had been training in weightlifting since the age of 15 under a previous Soviet weightlifting champ, or champion even, Kazerbi Gastov, who was born in the same village as him, so he'd been trained from a young age to a very high pedigree. He'd won bronze at the 71 championships in Worlds, and then another bronze in the European Championships that year. He was a Soviet lightweight champion in 71 and then from 73 to 75. But this was something of a surprise for people. He was very much and nearly ran a lot of the times, and the gold in the Olympics was certainly, him at his very, very best. The other point, I suppose, to mention is the third place winner, the Polish individual, Kaczmarek. He's obviously more famous. I suppose there's 2 points to which he can find his fame. In 82, he fled to West Germany with his son and his family to escape the Soviet regime. But more importantly, from our perspective in the podcast today, he was disqualified from the next Olympics in 76 for anabolic steroid use, being one of the first weightlifters to fail a drugs test at the Olympics, because drug testing obviously was brought in at this time specifically for anabolic steroids. So he had actually medaled in Montreal in 76, but was then disqualified thanks to his anabolic steroid use. So as disappointed as he would have been with his third place finish in 72, 76 is going to be another harbinger of doom for him, unfortunately.
Right. Okay, yes. We'll get more into the... we'll definitely be discussing the 1976 Olympics, and that, we'll talk about that once we get to it, but that was really the first Olympics where the drug testing was getting very strict, more sophisticated drug testing, and quite a few lifters got nailed in that 1976 Olympics. So we move on to the 75 kilo weight class, 165.3 pounds. Yordan Baikov of Bulgaria won the gold. World record total, 485 kilos. In second place, we have Mohammed Trezbolsi of Lebanon. He won the silver medal. You don't often hear of medalists from Lebanon. Italy's Anselmo Silvino won the bronze. He won the bronze also at the 1971 World Championships, and he repeated that by finishing third again here in the Olympics. Okay, Conor?
Well, you're right, I suppose, first and foremost, to say the uniqueness of a Lebanese athlete, winning a silver medal in weightlifting. And you could say the same about the third place finish with the Italian athlete. Again, not a country necessarily blessed with Olympic weightlifters on a regular basis. The big story of this division is obviously Yordan's dominance over the rest of the field. He totals with a 485 kilo total across all three lifts. Second place is 472.5 kilos, and third place is 470 kilos. That is a hugely dominant display, by one athlete in a division to go 12.5 kilos, yes. 25 pounds, or over 25 pounds, over second place is a hugely dominant display. And I suppose, people could rightly ask, well, what else did this man do? He won the Worlds, he won European Championships in 72 being his banner year. He didn't necessarily compete that long. He had a very short international career, but he won every medal that, he could. Supposedly, he was kicked off the Bulgarian team, He was kicked off the Bulgarian team in 73 after a dispute with his coach. The coach reportedly said that he was showing a huge lack of effort in his training, and this led to him being sort of ostracized by the Bulgarian weightlifting community for a short period. He left active competing and went on to be a weightlifting coach, but like an incredibly dominant athlete over an incredibly short period of time, and someone who maybe isn't as well known but is nevertheless an interesting individual. Our Lebanese friend, Mohammed Trezbolsi, he had a much longer career. He had, begun weightlifting at the age of 18, at least competitively. He sort of suffered with his weight and struggled to find the correct weight class for quite a long time. And, he was very much a surprise in that second place finish, but he did continue to move on strongly after that. Obviously, he doesn't achieve a similar event in an Olympic setting, but, he'll win golds in Mediterranean Games and Asian Games and sort of smaller scale games, but it's still an interesting figure nonetheless. And then finally, our Italian friend, Ansimo Savigno, he is around the sport, but again, this is very much his high point. I think of the three athletes, me personally, I would find Jordan the most fascinating because he speaks to that strength and depth that the Bulgarians have. Like, could you imagine the Americans kicking a gold medalist off the team during this period for perceived lack of effort? Like, it just ain't gonna happen.
Well, that's an example right there. It's an example of what we were talking about. It could be just one of those victims that could not, perhaps his body just couldn't handle that 6 times a day training regimen. It was just a brutal regimen. And like we said, those who could not handle it, they just didn't last very long. So we move on to the 82.5 kilo class. That's 181.9. So we'll round it off to 182 pounds. After finishing second at the 1970 and 1971 World Championships in the 75 kilo class, Leif Jensen of Norway moved up to the 82.5 kilo weight class, and he won first place with an Olympic record, 507.5 kilos. Jensen also won another silver at the 1974 Worlds. In second place, we have Norbert Ozamek of Poland, who won a bronze at the 1968 Olympics. He moved up a notch to take the silver this time. Norbert also won the silver at the 1970 Worlds. In third place, another Hungarian was this one I really can't pronounce. Georgi Horvath. He also took third place at the 1971 World Championships, and his clean and jerk of 192.5 kilos, 424 pounds. That was an Olympic record. Okay, Connor, you're up.
This, thank you. This division is one that holds a very special place in my heart as a historian for two reasons. One being tragic, and one just being incredibly candid, I suppose. The tragic element of this is obviously David Berger, who was representing Israel at that point and was one of the victims of the Munich massacre when Palestinian terrorists, kidnapped Israeli athletes, and some of whom were then subsequently murdered. So there's like a poignant element relating to geopolitics and security in this division. But the more important one for me personally is the winner, Leif Jensen. One of my favorite Olympic weightlifters of all time. And the reason for that is very simple. Probably outside of someone else who we will mention when we get to the super heavies, probably the most candid weightlifter about his anabolic steroid use, which I just find so fascinating. So he's a Norwegian weightlifter, and again, not a country renowned for its production of champion weightlifters. He won a silver medal 3 times at the World Championships, in 70, 71, 74, gold medal obviously at the 72 Olympics. He began using anabolic steroids in 1970, and it was not until 1973 that anabolic steroids were banned or prohibited, from Olympic weightlifting. So he'd been prescribed anabolic steroids by a general practitioner, a GP, a doctor, we would say, in 1970. And there's a wonderful interview done with him by NRK, pardon me, which is a Norwegian newspaper, in 2012, where he talks about having no regrets, qualms, issues whatsoever about his anabolic steroid use. And I'll just read some quotes from this interview because I think it's fascinating. It says, "It wasn't a hidden secret once, it was completely open matter that everyone talked about and everyone knew. He estimated that 49 out of 50 world champion athletes at that time in weightlifting were using anabolic steroids. And he said that, I don't feel like I cheated. Steroids were not on the doping list. I would not say that we were doped. It was not considered a drug. It was not even a secret that we used it. We saw it as completely unproblematic." And he goes on to talk about his steroid use. And obviously, steroids weren't banned in Olympic weightlifting during that period, but he is very open about having no qualms whatsoever about using it, and says that, if no one had used them, he would have won. If he hadn't used them and everyone had used them, he wouldn't have won. So he saw it as sort of leveling the chemical playing field of sorts. But he's not talked about enough when we talk about drug use in Olympic weightlifting, probably because he's very level-headed about it and quite comedic in some senses about his drug use. But what's interesting is he says, he attempted a comeback in 76, and by that point anabolic steroids were banned, and he had decided to no longer take them for his 76 comeback. But he said that the athletes who continued to take them in Scandinavia would go off to sort of military camps and military bases to learn how to sort of circumvent drug use and trick the drug testers, for want of a better phrase. So for me, this weight division is entirely about Leaf. Like a great athlete in and of itself, but just an incredible man for insights into drug use in weightlifting during that period before they're banned. And there's only one other person I think who can match his openness. But again, I won't spoil that. We'll be talking about him when we get to the super heavyweights.
Well, if you are able to, Conor, if you're able to send me that interview, that would be very interesting. That is extremely candid to talk about that and to say that he didn't even have any regrets about it. That is very candid and very interesting. I'm
Yep, no worries. It makes
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I even realized that the steroids were not even on the ban list. I realized that there wasn't really any testing until the 76 Olympics, but I don't think I even realized that they weren't even on the ban list. Okay, so we go into the 90 kilo weight class, and this is a very interesting weight class for me because I had the opportunity to interview the silver medalist in this weight class, Lee James of America. The Soviet, David Riegert, was favored to win this weight class. This is 90 kilo, 198.4 pounds. He had bombed out in the 1972 Olympics, and after the press, he was leading by 5 kilos. Oh, actually, I got a little confused there, Conor. Let me backtrack. I have to backtrack a little because for a moment there, for some reason, I thought I was talking about the 1976 Olympics. So we are not talking about the 1976 Olympics. We are talking about the 1972 Olympics. So the Soviet lifter David Riegert was favored to win this weight class and led by 5 kilos after the press, but he did not fare well in the snatch. Needing only 155 kilos to maintain his 5 kilo lead, He opened instead with 160 kilos in the snatch and missed it 3 times, eliminating himself from posting a total. So distraught was Riegert over his failure that he banged his head against the wall backstage and had to be restrained by the coaches. So we have Andon Nikolov of Bulgaria won the gold medal with an Olympic record total of 525 kilos. His teammate Tanas Shapov won the silver, and Sweden's Hans Bettenborg took the bronze. Hans was known for his proficiency in the press and broke 11 world records in the press. The 2 Americans, Phil Gropaldi and Rich Holbrook, finished 4th and 5th respectively. Holbrook set an Olympic record with a 197.5 kilo, that's 435 pounds, in the clean and jerk. Gropaldi attempted a 202.5 kilo, that's 446.4 pounds, clean and jerk, which would have, had he made that lift, I believe that would have earned him the bronze medal. But the weight proved just a little too heavy for him. Okay, Conor, sorry for that confusion there. For some reason, I thought I was talking about the 76 Olympics.
No worries. And you took my great David Rigber, quote about, obviously bombing out then on the snatch, and such an incredible just mismanagement. When you look at the openers that other people went for, the next heaviest opener, I'm trying to find my notes here, was the Finnish weightlifter who finishes 8th in the end, Jaakko Kalevari. So, incredibly mismanaged in so many ways. And this is going back to, and it's a conversation I've had with powerlifting coaches. Whoever wins isn't necessarily the strongest person in competition. It's the person who's able to combine strength with strategy in the right way. And as intimidating to the opposition as an opener of 160 kilos is, you need to pair that with, at least a sound idea of where you're going to be at. So there's that story, from a selfish Irish perspective. Frank Rothwell, has no valid lifts in this division. He's an Irish weightlifter. He's the 2nd Irish weightlifter to go to an Olympic Games, first Irishman to snatch 300 pounds, 136 kilos. He was very much a sort of beacon of Irish weightlifting for many decades. So that was kind of cool to be able to research Frank again. I'd previously looked at him in previous research. The other story about this, obviously, Riegert gets his Olympic moment. He'll go on to win again, and he'll go on to win a gold medal in the 76 Olympic Games. But I think for me that entire division is defined by poor management, on his part. The eventual gold medalist who does set an Olympic record, and on his highest snatch is 155 kilos. To open with 160 was a very bold line in the sand, but considering that Riegert, he initially missed his military press of 180 kilos, he got it on the 2nd attempt, and then set an Olympic record, as said, with 187.5 kilos on his 3rd attempt. It's incredible to me that you'd miss one lift in the military press and then not go conservatively for your next lift, having set an Olympic record in the first lift. Again, just one of those elements of not being tactically astute enough or savvy enough about these things. From an American point of view, obviously 2 American finishes in 4th and 5th respectively, both on 505 kilos. But again, 7.5 kilos off 3rd place. So it's a strong finish, but it is behind the eventual podium places. But very much men's 90 kilos. is unfortunately for me, the Rieger's folly, if we want to be poetic about it.
Yes, from what I have read and heard about David Riegert, he was could be very stubborn and did not always, often did not take the advice of the coaches. And I guess it was just a matter of being overconfident. There was, as you say, there was no reason to open with 160 kilos. So I think he was just overconfident and really, from what, like I said, from what I've read and heard, he did not always take the advice of the coaches. It could be very hard to coach and very stubborn. Oh, and what was the name of the Irish lifter again?
Oh, Frank Rothwell.
Yeah, the name sounds familiar. And you say he was the first Irishman to snatch over 300 pounds.
Yeah, that's right. He was the second Irishman to go to an Olympic Games. Tommy Hayden was the first man to go to the Olympics in weightlifting for Ireland.
Interesting. Okay, we move on to the 110 kilo class. This is the new weight class. Besides the 52 kilo class, this is the other additional new weight class, 110 kilos. That's 242 and a half pounds. And we have Jan Toltz, who we spoke about in the last segment. In the 68 Olympics, he was in the 90 kilo weight class. So he took quite a big jump in weight, going from 90 kilos to 110 kilos. He, of course, was part of that Soviet team. He placed second at the 1968 Olympics, but apparently the weight gain helped him because this time he won the gold medal, a Olympic record total of 580 kilos. And I don't remember if we spoke about this in the last segment, but Toltz broke 40 world records in his career. That is quite impressive. In second place, we have a Bulgarian again, Alexandra Krachev, who placed second at the 1970 World Championships and third at the 1971 Worlds. Then we have Stefan Kruchner of East Germany, who placed second at the 1971 World Championships. This time he had to settle for the bronze medal. Okay, Conor, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think the big story is the impact that the new weight class has. Like, you mentioned Jan, who finishes second in 68 Olympics and has this huge weight jump then to the 110 kilo newly introduced category. He's, as I said, an incredibly prolific athlete. It was the first middleweight heavy lifter to break the 500 kilo barrier across the three lifts. The second place and third place finishes, this is very much men who were competing out of themselves. And I think there is actually something to be said for the second place finisher, Alexander Kraichev, who has this incredible progression in the World Championships. Just focusing on them, his first Worlds is in 69 in the heavyweight class, and he'll finish 8th with a 495 kilo total. He'll then finish second in 1970 with a 535 kilo total. He'll finish third in 71 with a 454 total, and then he'll finish second in 72 with a 562.5 kilo total, the same total that he gets in the Olympic Games themselves. So you have someone who has a really remarkable ascendancy in the sport and then drops away after the 72 games. And likewise, Stefan Grutzner isn't really around for a particularly long period of time. He finishes second in the Worlds in 71 and then third in the Worlds in 72, second in the European Championships in 72, competes again in the Friendship Cup in 74, but, really disappears from that moment on. So I think it shows, I suppose, the opportunities that open up when a new weight division is created, that, you have people who are battle tested, like Jan Toltz, who's able to really make use of that extra weight to push himself to bigger and better. And then you have others who are coming from, I would say, relative obscurity, to get into that weight class. Obviously, again, I'm aware this is a US, based podcast. So, we have two American lifters there. We have Frank Kapsouras and then Alan Ball competing for the United States, finishing 10th and 11th respectively. So, there is some American representation within that, but certainly not as optimistic or hopeful a division for the Americans as that, 90 kilo category would have been, with the likes of Phil Capaldi and Rick Holbrook in it.
Yes, again, I think it was a good decision to add this weight class. It definitely seemed to have helped a lot of lifters, especially Jan Toltz. Now, as we move into the super heavyweight class, as you mentioned before, we have the tragedy. The final weight class was scheduled for September 5th, but then the unthinkable happened. Before dawn on September 5th, a Palestine terrorist group broke into the Olympic Village and took 11 Israeli athletes, coaches, and team officials as hostages. 2 of the hostages were killed immediately in a standoff in the Olympic Village. Yeah, 2. Make sure I have that correct. Yeah, it looks like 2 of the victims were killed. And then there was a standoff in the Olympic Village that lasted for almost 18 hours. A botched rescue attempt followed, and the result was devastating. The remaining Israeli hostages were killed. 2 of the victims, one that you mentioned before, David Berger, and the other, I believe, was a middleweight, Yosef Romano. 2 of those victims were weightlifters. The games went on. Just give me a minute. I lost my place here. Oh, I was going to mention the David Berger. I actually competed in weightlifting competition probably about 5 or 6 years in a row. I competed in the David Berger Memorial weightlifting meet in Queens, New York. Some of the lifters actually personally knew David Berger because he had gone to college. He was studying to be a lawyer, and he had gone to college for a couple years in Queens, New York. So some of the weightlifters actually knew him personally. So I always considered it an honor to compete in that memorial meet for him. But getting back to the Olympics, the games went on. Just 34 hours later, after the senseless murders, Soviet strongman Vasily Alexeyev won the gold medal in the super heavyweight division. Alexeyev of the Soviet Union was the heavy favorite in the over 110 kilo class, and he did not disappoint, winning easily with an Olympic record 640 kilos. Alexeyev competed in his first world championship in 1970, and he not only won the gold medal, but also clean and jerked 227.5 kilos. That's 501.5 pounds. He was the first man to clean and jerk 500 pounds. He won the gold medal again at the 1971 Worlds. Winning the silver medal was Rudolf Mang of West Germany, who repeated his second-place finish at the 1973 Worlds. And taking the bronze medal was former shot putter Gerd Bunk of East Germany. Two lifters predicted to contend for medals were Ken Patera of Team USA and Serge Redding, who we spoke about in the last segment, of Belgium. By the way, my paternal grandparents were from Belgium. Redding, who won a silver medal at the 1968 Games, was eliminated when he failed on all three press attempts. With 225 kilos, that's 496 pounds. Ken Patera, who had been unable to make the Olympic team as a shot putter in 1968, placed third in the press with a lift of 212.5 kilos, but he was unsuccessful with all three snatch attempts and was eliminated from medal contention. Patera won the silver medal at the 1971 World Championships and retired from weightlifting after the Olympics to join the world of professional wrestling. In an interview many years later, Alexiev spoke about how difficult it was to focus on weightlifting after the tragic events of Black September the day before. A quote from Alexiev, I don't know if this is exactly word for word, but he said, I knew many of the murdered athletes. It was difficult to focus on the competition after the murders, and many of the other weightlifters performed poorly because of it. Okay, Conor, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, and you've mentioned the sort of bittersweetness of that particular division, and obviously we've talked about the Israeli athlete who lost his life. This is very much one of my favorite Olympics because it is the coronation of Vasily Alexiev as one of, if not the greatest weightlifters that we've ever seen. He begins his weightlifting career in 1970, really, and between 1970 and 77, he sets 80 world records. There's a wonderful, this division is just dripping with anecdotes left, right, and center. But there's a wonderful story that, because Vasily is funded by the Soviet government, every time he breaks a world record, the Soviet government gives him a bonus. So that's one of the reasons why, if you look at Vasily's, record attempts and record successes, it's often by 1.1 pound or, half a kilo, to use a European metric. So he would oftentimes just do like itty bitty increases to break his world records because he knew that money was forthcoming. Vasily was a complete force of nature, and even though this was a division that was, impacted by the Munich massacres, Vasily totaled 30 kilos over the second place finish, Rudolf Mang. Now there are 2 disqualifications for people who would arguably have pushed him further, but that is an incredibly dominant performance in the super heavyweight division. 30 kilos more than your second place finish, and then nearly 70 kilos more than third place finisher Gerd Bunk, again someone who I have a great amount of respect for, totaled with 572.5 kilos. Vasily totaled with 640. He'll win gold medals again in later games, but just an incredibly dominant performance by one of the best weightlifters of all time. This is someone who Oscar State, one of the great weightlifting judges and organizers, remarked that when he saw Vasily press 209 kilos in the air, it looked as if he was pressing a broomstick overhead. So for me, this is the coronation of Vasily Alexiev. It's also the sort of what-if moments for 2 of the other strong weightlifters who were tipped to push Vasily, those being Ken Patera and Serge Redding. Now, I mentioned when we were talking about Leif Jensen, my favorite anecdote about, the sort of drug use within the sport. Ken Patera is my second favorite anecdote going into these games because, and I know we mentioned this in the previous episode, Mark, Pater says to American journalists going out to the 72 Olympics, I've done all the training that I need to do. I've eaten all the right foods. My mind is in the best state. This division comes down to one thing. Whose drugs are better, mine or Vasili's? Now, Pater will not complete lifts in the military press and in the snatch. He bombs out at 270 or 227 kilos, pardon me, in the press, and then he tries for 230 and he bombs on that. He'll then have no valid lifts in the snatch, so it's a very poor performance from Pater. Likewise, Serge Redding starts off far too heavy, 222.5 kilos in the press, fails to make that on 3 efforts. Now, funnily, Rudolf Mang, who finished second, starts out at the same weight as Redding, bombs out on the first attempt, bombs out in the second attempt, but then nails it on the third attempt at 225 kilos, going even heavier than the weight that he was struggling with. So, had Pater and Redding, I don't know, maybe been a little bit savvier, they probably would have medalled over Mang and Bonk, but it certainly wasn't to be for them. Rudolf Mang is a fascinating individual in his own right and very much deserving of that award or of that medal. This is someone who's been weightlifting against adults from the age of 14. Very strong performances. In the 68 Olympics, where he finished 5th, he pushes up. He's a heavyweight and he pushes up super heavy, where he'll get that second place finish. And then we come to Gerd Bonk, who, by all accounts, unfortunately passed away in 2019, was an incredibly affable and personable individual. He is seen as one of the victims of the East German doping regime. He claimed in a report or in an interview in 2003 that he had diabetes, a failing liver, numb limbs, and the signs of a failing body thanks to the drug use that he was subjected to under the East German team. So he was someone that I feel the East Germans really built up to be their Vasily, and they very much wanted him to be their Vasily. And you'll see that in Montreal in '76 when he'll run Vasily a little bit closer, but not too close in that super heavyweight division. But he really did suffer and pay for that drug use, and so a lot of which is actually foisted upon him if you read interviews of him. But people who I used to train in a gym with, Hercules Gym in Dublin, would have competed in competitions with Gerd Bonk, and one of them, Ben Hartkin, is a lovely fella. He remembers chatting to Vasily about keeping pigeons. Or not Vasily, chatting to Gerd Bonk about keeping pigeons. And this is the thing that really connected them rather than their love of weightlifting in the 1970s. But I think, there are 4 big stories from this division. The first is Vasily, and the first has to be the story of Vasily. This is an incredibly important story. The second is the bombing of Pater and Redding at the Games, who probably would have run Vasily a little bit closer. The third is the Munich massacre, as you mentioned, and then the fourth is Bonk's success, for want of a better phrase, in getting that third place finish. You mentioned in the 68 Olympics, obviously, when 2 lifters have the same total, what they did is they looked at the body weight between them. Gerd Bonk finishes third, total 572.5 kilos. Jouko Lepä from Finland has the same total, but Gerd Bonk weighs 142 kilos. Jouko weighs 144 kilos. So, there's less than a 2 kilo difference in winning that third place medal, because that is how fine the margins are once you get to the Olympic stage. That 1.8 kilos or whatever the case will define or deny you a gold medal.
Oh, that's an interesting. I didn't know about Alexiev and Gerd Bonk having a similar interest in raising pigeons. I don't think I had ever heard about that. And you mentioned the steroid use, how it affected Gerd Bonk later in his life with various health problems. And I think at that time, in the late 60s and the early 1970s, when these Eastern Bloc countries were giving these athletes the steroids, I think a lot of these athletes were completely ignorant to what the what they were even being given. They were just told, don't worry about it. It'll make you stronger and it'll help you heal faster. And they paid for it later in life, unfortunately. They were not, the athletes themselves were, I'm sure, not aware of the side effects that they might have later in life.
No, and John Fair's articles on steroid use are really illustrative and interesting. During that point, they weren't aware of the side effects. A lot of them thought of these things as almost like super vitamins or super minerals, whatever the case may be. So there is this element of it being this unknown substance that everyone is taking. A modern equivalent would be maybe seeing it as creatine use. Obviously, creatine is not an anabolic steroid. It's a perfectly legal supplement to use. But it's so banal now, that athletes would just take creatine because, it might give me an extra rep or two when I'm training. That, you don't really think about it. It's something everyone is doing. For people who are interested, on YouTube, there are some really incredible videos available of the 72 Olympic Games. You can see the athletes behind the scenes training. You can obviously see them on the platform as well. There's a great video. The title is just uploaded, 1972 Olympic Weightlifters by the host channel, 1972 Olympics. And you'll see the athletes training behind the scenes and just warming up. And it's incredible to see the different regimens that they all have. But there's some incredible shots of the super heavyweight division in particular, and Vasily and Serge Redding and all of these athletes struggling with the weights or succeeding with the weights. So it's an incredible Olympics from like a media standpoint and what's been left around it as well.
Yes, and to go over the team standings, Bulgaria, I believe, did not score any medals in the 1968 Olympics. They won, they took the team title here. They won 3 gold medals and 3 silver medals. And as you mentioned, a lot of that had to do with the training system of Ivan Abajev. 3 gold medals, 3 silver medals. They were followed by the Soviet Union, which won. They also won 3 gold medals, 1 silver medal, and 1 bronze medal. And Hungary came in third, winning 1 gold medal, 1 silver medal, and 3 bronze medals. Okay, I think that about wraps it up, Connor.
Yeah, nothing more to add, except I think, the trends that you mentioned, Mark, will continue, especially the continued dominance of that Bulgarian team and the Bulgarian system. And, if anyone has used the Bulgarian system, you will understand the pain that brought to the sport of weightlifting.
There are some people who say they have used a variation of the Bulgarian system, and those who trained under that system said there is no variation. If you think you trained a variation of the Bulgarian system, then you have not really trained the Bulgarian system, because there is no variation of it. It's just all out 6 times a day, brutal training. Connor, give us your website again.
Yeah, no problem. So it's physicalculturestudy.com. So it's been running since 2014. It's a 10-year anniversary. That's wonderful. So it's a history of fitness website that's been running for over a decade, having historical articles on everything from the history of the barbell, the squat, the deadlift, to more esoteric things. I've recent articles on how did Steve Reeves prepare for a bodybuilding show, what Vince Scaronda's lacto-vegetarian diet was. And this week I published a history of the Texas deadlift bar. This being one of my new hobbies is deadlifting with a deadlift bar.
Okay, so for those interested, check out that website. I think you'll find it very interesting. Okay, thanks for joining us, Conor.
No, absolute pleasure as always.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, aka the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.